There we go. Audio's on now. Thanks, guys, for joining us on another episode here of Extreme Health Radio. We're only 10 minutes late today, which is great. So we're making progress. We broadcast live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. So thanks, guys, for holding on. Had a couple audio issues, but we sorted them out. So happy Monday, everybody. I hope you're having a good Monday and everything is going great for you. We've got a really great show for you today with Morley Robbins, and we'll be talking with him about iron toxicity, minerals, magnesium, and then the roles that they play in our diseases. So this should be a really fascinating show. This is episode 619. So if you guys want to grab the show notes, if you're listening on a podcast, anything like that, if you want to grab the show notes later on in time, it is extremehealthradio.com// I could say that 619, and we'll put all the show links and everything we have going on, the sponsor links and all of that good stuff over there. And let's see if there's anything else to get to here today. Oh yeah, I want to share with you guys some of our upcoming shows. I always forget to do that. Let me bring that up on the screen here. And if you go to extremehealthradio.com, you can see all of our upcoming shows. And today, obviously, Morley Robbins, iron toxicity and the root cause protocol and how to stop it. And then we had a cancellation on Wednesday. We were going to speak with, I forget who we are going to speak with. The main guy behind cancertutor.com, but we're looking to fill that show up on Wednesday. So we'll either do a free-for-all Wednesday or we'll have another guest. We might have the guys from Amp Coil back on that show. And the Amp Coil is an interesting device. It's like a PEMF device combined with Rife technology. So really fascinating show. So I think they're going to be on Wednesday. And then on Friday, we have Allison Huish. I think that's how you say her last name. She used essential oils to overcome a brain tumor that her body had, and she was featured in The Truth About Cancer, our friend Ty Bollinger's docu-series that's going on right now, which I'll tell you more about later. And then next Monday, Dr. Jennifer Daniels. Got a lot of cool stuff every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. So if this is your first time here, or if this is your first time with our show, wherever you're listening or watching, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of the episodes that we have coming out. New shows every single week. So hit the subscribe button, share it with your friends, tag your friends, let them know that we're doing this to help as many people as we possibly can. So let me bring Morley up on the show. Let me read his little bio here. Interesting guy, and we've been aware of his work for a long time. Let me see here really quickly, bring his bio up. But I really, really like his stuff, and like I said, been aware of his work. He's also known as the Magnesium Man. He's the founder of the Magnesium Advocacy Group and the creator of the Root Cause Protocol. He's been a hospital executive and consultant for 32 years when he had a condition in his shoulder called like a frozen shoulder. And his family and friends recommended surgery and that kind of stuff. And he said, "You guys are crazy. I'm not doing that." That woo-woo stuff, and so he eventually had it fixed, and then his whole life opened up, and he started questioning everything, and so it's really, really great to have him on the show. Let me turn his audio up for you and bring him on the show. And Morley, how are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Oh, so glad to be here. Yeah, I was reading your story in your bio because, like I said, I've known about your work for some time. But I was reading your bio, and it's interesting that you had a sort of an experience with an alternative sort of health modality, and that caused you to really start questioning everything and change your entire career. 32 years in the hospital industry. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, I was pretty well burned out having done that for that many years,
Uh-huh.
and I was at a health food store that I had frequented for many years, and they had recommended that I go see Dr. Liz. And I knew that was code for a chiropractor. And I went,
Nope.
I don't do, not going to go there. And so they sold me some supplements. That didn't do anything. I was miserable. I mean, I couldn't pick my hand up above my waist.
Wow.
And I was not sleeping. I mean, I was really, really pretty rugged. So I went back in a couple months later and with my tail between my legs and said, "You must have something stronger." And the owner looked me in the eye and she said, "Morley, We love you. Go see Dr. Liz. So with my tail between my legs, I went to see Dr. Liz, and she was a network chiropractor who
Mm-hmm.
would, in her uh, office in Evanston, Illinois, she had 9 tables. So she would heal 9 people at a time.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it was a network of clients being healed by this modality. And it was amazing. And it was so profound that it really did challenge me to kind of step back and say, what else don't I know? What is this process of healing about? And it came on the heels of having done a major study for some clients in North Carolina
Uh-huh.
on projecting where healthcare was going to be, where the demand for healthcare services were going to be in 2025. So this was around 2008. And so we were looking out 15 years. And on every index, every disease modality, it was a hockey stick
Oh
in
wow.
terms of where it was going to be. And it was really unsettling. And I realized that I could no longer stay on the sidelines. Instead of being the executive or the consultant kind of massaging the problem, I said, maybe I've got to step in and help solve the problem. And that's what I've done. I decided to become a wellness coach or a health coach. I didn't know what that meant. And I had no idea where I was going to go. And I just, for some reason, I was fascinated with heart disease
Mm-hmm.
because everybody in my family died of it. So I thought maybe I should learn about that. And happened upon some very interesting articles, but was reading this particular book, and my one of my clients said, you really ought to write an article about what you're learning. I said, yeah, you're probably right. So I decided to write it in reverse psychology,
Okay.
and instead of telling people how not to get a heart attack, I decided to write an article that was a 10-step plan for having an MI.
Oh.
And 7 of the 10 steps were based on the recommendations from the American Heart Association, because everything they tell us is a lie. And so I was reviewing that with another client, and she said, this is really very good. It's very, very clever.
Uh-huh.
And she said, I can't help but think that step number 8 isn't more important than you are indicating. And it happened to be that step number 8 was eliminate magnesium from your diet. And
Okay.
so I thought, yeah, maybe I should look into that. And so I read Carolyn Dean's book, The Magnesium Miracle.
Yeah, yeah.
And and that's where I cut my teeth on minerals. And that was a decade ago, and I've never let up.
Mm-hmm.
And what I focus on are really 3 minerals and one other nutrient. I think people need more magnesium. They need more bioavailable copper, and they need a lot less iron. But what we also need is retinol, real vitamin A, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Mm-hmm.
But those nutrients come together in a very powerful way inside the human body to keep us in homeostasis.
I like that.
And
So let's go through some of those. If let's dive in to each one of those and talk a little bit about each one and why we need them and what they do. And so let's
sure.
start with magnesium, which is partly your focus.
Well, I definitely will do that. Let me just start with a premise. There is no medical disease. It doesn't exist. There is metabolic dysfunction,
Mm.
which is caused by mineral dysregulation,
Okay.
but there is no medical disease. All of those labels that you're familiar with are just another way of shackling the minds and the masses. And basically, the thing that most people don't realize is that allopathic medicine is based on the work of Louis Pasteur.
Mm-hmm.
Louis Pasteur did his work over 150 years ago, and he was all about pathogens and the booga wooga bugs and it's terrible out there.
Right.
And most people don't realize that there's one thing he forgot to tell us. that all pathogens, bacteria, fungus, virus, and parasites all live, replicate, and thrive on an iron buffet. And if you don't know that, and if you don't know that the concept of iron deficiency anemia is the biggest lie on this planet, then you will believe in disease. And what I've labored mightily to do is to pull back the curtain to reveal the truth of what's really going on. And what I did for many years, to your point about, let's start with magnesium.
Mm-hmm.
Magnesium is an amazing mineral. It's responsible for a modest 3,751 enzymes in the human body. And you'll see in the internet articles and the scientific articles that, it's around 300 enzymes that magnesium is responsible for, regulates. And most people don't know where that came from. That number 300 was, actually, it was a response of a noted professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Bert Valley. And he was asked, this was back in the 1950s, he was asked, Dr. Valley, how many enzymes does magnesium regulate? And he goes, I don't know, it's probably about 300.
Oh my gosh.
And that became the scientific cornerstone for all these research. And it's like, it was just a swag. The guy made it up. It's really funny. He just made it up. So, but in 2012, they actually identified the magnesium inside the cell. And it's, roughly speaking, there's about 9,000 enzymes that run the human body. And they all work just like the car you drive. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you drove your car without a key?
Doesn't happen.
Well, unless you're, Fred Flintstone or Wilma Flintstone, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, when you think of 9,000 enzymes, your first inclination is, well, there must be 9,000 minerals.
Right.
Well, there aren't. There are about 84 in seawater. There are 18 that are considered essential.
Okay.
But it turns out there's only a handful that really make a difference. And they're all lost to stress. And the mineral that leaves the body the fastest is magnesium.
Uh-huh.
It goes like that in a New York second. It's out the body. Why? Because we expend energy to respond to stress.
Uh-huh.
And how do you spell energy? Spelled magnesium hyphen ATP.
Uh-huh.
And the body has to let go of that magnesium in order to gain access to that phosphate molecule that can then be the spark it needs for the energy.
Morley, there was a doctor that we had on the show a while back. It was fascinating. He was sharing with us that he had put someone on a magnesium protocol to the extent that you're talking about magnesium. And he was saying that he was putting one of his patients on an IV drip of magnesium every day, like a whole, I forget how many cc's were in the bag, but he was doing this every day for about 10 days. And it was only until like the 10th day that he actually got his magnesium levels up to baseline. So this is exactly what you're saying here. I mean, that's not even oral magnesium. This is like 10 times the amount of magnesium that you could get in a drip. And it took 10 days of treatment just to bring him up to baseline. It's just crazy.
Yeah. People don't realize, first of all, they don't really know what minerals are. They've heard of them. Mm-hmm. What they don't realize is that they're basically gone from the soil. Mm-hmm. So if they're not in the soil, how are they going to get in the produce or the animals we eat? And again, we've never been taught that they're not hood ornaments. A lot of conventional practitioners think of them as hood ornaments. They're not. They're the keys to start the engine. That's the whole point. And if we've got a key that runs 3,700 of these engines, well, that's a pretty important mineral. The key to magnesium, though, is, and this took me probably 8 years to figure this out.
Uh-huh.
Magnesium it's an amazing mineral because you can solve a lot of symptoms. You know, you can have, arrhythmia in the heart. You can have cholesterol issues. I mean, you can have headaches or even dementia for that matter. And you start to pump magnesium back in, and the symptoms of that condition are going to subside. But what took me the longest time to realize is that it was the underlying oxidative stress
Uh-huh.
that was causing the magnesium burn rate. And that's
Interesting.
my phrase for stress, magnesium burn rate. And when you're under more stress, your magnesium burn rate's going faster and faster and faster. And so what I came to realize is that the origin of oxidative stress is the tension that exists between bioavailable copper and iron inside the body. And it's absolutely amazing. And what makes copper bioavailable is retinol. So when I say bioavailable, think of a car that requires a clutch.
Uh-huh.
And if you've ever driven a car like that, they don't work so well if you don't know how to use the clutch.
Mm-hmm.
But the clutch for copper in the human body is an enzyme called ferroxidase, and it's what regulates iron in the human body. Now let me paint a picture here for folks. So we've got, for a healthy human being, you need about 25,000 milligrams of magnesium.
Okay.
You need about 5,000 milligrams of iron and 90 milligrams of copper.
90. Okay.
Interesting
Ratio.
juxtaposition there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's amazing about iron is that it can destroy both magnesium and copper if it gets unbound. Now, we've been led to believe, and we've been trained, like circus bears,
Yeah.
to believe that iron is very tightly regulated and is very well controlled, and there's nothing to worry about. And oh, by the way, we've also been trained to believe that we're copper toxic and iron deficient. And if you believe that, I've got both a used bridge and a used BMW I'd love to sell you.
Right.
Because both of those are bold-faced lies. And so this issue that we struggle with as a society is we're not really aware of minerals. We certainly don't know of the breadth and depth of magnesium. And then we get to this copper iron thing. We find out that there's 60 atoms of iron for every atom of copper, and they're a ventriloquist act. And iron's the dummy.
So is it Morley, is it that the copper is not bioavailable? Are we getting the wrong kind of copper? And that's why a lot of practitioners like Lawrence Wilson and other people like that are saying we're copper toxic?
Great question. The real dilemma we face is there's several layers of dilemma.
Okay.
One is copper is completely gone from the soils.
Uh-huh.
And unless you have farmers who are actively spraying their field, their soil, not their produce, but their soil
Mm-hmm.
with copper sulfate, copper's not going to get back into that soil.
Okay.
Then we have the added assault of a lot of fields are using glyphosate, Roundup,
Mm-hmm.
to keep the vegetation and the weeds at bay. And what I learned from a conversation with Stephanie Seneff at a conference in April earlier this year is that glyphosate has a unique property. It chelates copper down to a pH of 1.
Interesting.
That's below our stomach acid.
Right.
And so this ubiquitous weed killer that's all over the food system now is pulling copper out of our tissue. Not only just pulling it out of the soil, it's pulling it out of the soil of our gut. Then we have something called high fructose corn syrup. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where 50% of the sugar calories are today. And high fructose corn syrup is a known chelator of copper. This is not a surprise. This has been known since the 1970s.
Okay.
Myra Fields and Dr. Reiser at USDA have been studying this for a long, long, long time. Basically saying, what are you trying to do? Kill people? Because when you take copper out of the mammal, it suddenly gets an enlarged heart. It gets a pancreatic that shrinks. Oxidative stress builds up, and then the species dies.
Now,
well, guess what the number one cause of liver disease is today? It's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Right.
Guess what it's caused by? Lack of copper.
Lack of copper. So now with the copper, it's fascinating because so many people have such different opinions about copper. I've always been led to believe that, like you were saying before, we're copper toxic. But is that because of the lack of bioavailability, like I mentioned before, or the lack of the enzyme that you mentioned that goes with the bioavailable copper?
All of the above. No, those are great questions. The confusion is that there is a shortage in the environment. Let's just accept that.
Okay.
But then we've got the added confusion of most people have copper pipes bringing water to their homes.
Right. I was going to bring that up. Mm-hmm.
And so and a lot of the water systems are going to leach copper out of that water.
Okay.
Or out of those pipes. And that's not the best form of copper.
Okay.
Then we have copper supplements, not the right kind of copper. And so the phrase that I use with emphasis is bioavailable. And that enzyme that we're dancing around, this ferroxidase enzyme, I think it's the Mount Everest enzyme in the human body. I don't know of another enzyme that would supersede it because the master pro-oxidant element in the human body is iron. It's iron. I mean, we've got so much iron in our body. People don't even realize that because they think, oh, I'm anemic. I'm iron deficient. I need more iron.
Right.
I just responded to a woman in Norway today she's a mom to her daughter who's been taking 200 milligrams of iron every other day for the last couple of years. I'm like, oh my God, we need 1 milligram coming through our mouth every day. That's about all we need. But the issue is if we don't have that enzyme, we've got a problem. And why don't we have that enzyme? This is really important. You're asking an excellent question. The enzyme that's really important here is called ATP7A. It's also called the Menkes gene.
Okay.
And that enzyme is where copper literally gets loaded into that enzyme. And it's 6 to 8 coppers. The part that's a little confusing is that when it was first discovered in 1941, Holmberg and Laurel, 2 Swedish physiologists, they thought they had discovered the Holy Grail. I mean, they were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And there were 8 copper atoms in that enzyme. Then about 30 years later, it dropped to 7. And now about 35 years later, it's down to 6. Now I don't know where these coppers are going. So it's got me curious beyond belief. And the I wear a tin hat, so I'm a conspiracist. I'm like, somebody's done something with our coppers.
Right.
But the point is that loading of coppers into that enzyme, one of the most important functions in the body. And to give you a sense of where this enzyme hangs out, it's in our brain. There's 8 times more of that enzyme in our eyes than our brain.
Okay.
It's in our heart, our pancreas, our liver, our kidneys, our joints, our blood. And for women, it's in the placenta. And then it's also in our digestive tract. This enzyme it's all over the body, but no one's ever heard of it. especially if you're getting a degree from medical school. And
ATP
so,
7A is what it's called.
yep, yep.
ATP 7A.
And that's what loads copper into the protein is called ceruloplasmin.
Okay.
And when the coppers are loaded in there, it flips. It's like a transformer, and it becomes ferroxidase enzyme.
Oh, okay.
And so the sleight of hand in the literature, and this took me several years to finally figure this out, they'll talk about ceruloplasmin level
Okay.
versus ceruloplasmin activity. And the activity is code for the enzyme ferroxidase. Wink, wink. You got to be able to follow that.
Yeah.
And they're very clever how they talk about it because they know how important it is. And they also know how much Big Pharma demonizes it.
Right.
Because if it's gotten to the point now where I've come to conclude that if you have bioavailable copper and retinol in your diet, you don't need doctors. The disease goes away.
Interesting. So now, Morley, I got to ask you really quickly. Oh, it sounds like I'm getting a little bit of feedback.
That's all right.
Morley, do you have any earbuds by chance that you might be able to use in case? Because I'm hearing myself twice. If you don't, that's it's okay. But it sounds like my voice is now. I could only hear it once. There's some weird mix-up going on there. But I wanted to ask you about, there's a lot of places now selling like copper utensils and copper bowls to eat out of, and copper cups and things like that. Should we be avoiding
copper socks and copper pants, right? And
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's absolutely crazy because the copper is supposed to be inside our body, not outside our body.
Okay.
And so, there are. Part of the challenge is we're now delving into the post 1984 insanity. Because you and I know we're copper toxic and we're iron deficient, right? And I'm just banging away at no, it's just the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And that really people they're like, wait, I'm totally confused now. And it's all about the issue of the iron needs to be functional and the copper needs to be bioavailable to make the iron functional.
Okay.
Now, here's what happened. When we get a blood test, we believe that the blood test is accurate. And we believe that it's a 100% representation of what's going on in our tissue. No. Not even close.
Okay.
So that iron in the tissue can be 10 times higher than iron in the blood.
Okay.
Now, if you want to get really unsettled, retinol in the tissue can be 10 times lower than it shows in the blood.
Oh man!
Now your listeners are getting a little squirmish because they're like, yeah, but I do these blood tests all the time, and my doctor. Well, your doctor doesn't know this. I don't think they do anyway. So the thing is, the world inside the tissue is a very different beast, and we have what's called an iron recycling system, and to get real geeky on people, it's called the reticuloendothelial system, which is a stupid way of saying recycling.
Okay.
And every day, you and I need, and all of your listeners, we all need about 25 milligrams of iron. And 95% of the iron that we need, 24 of those 25 milligrams of iron, come from that recycling program. And that recycling program is run by professional packmen. These are tissues that like to gobble up things, and they're called macrophages.
Okay.
Some of the most important cells in the human body, and they gobble up pathogens Those are the first responders.
Mm-hmm.
And they gobble up dying red blood cells. And when they gobble up the dying red blood cells, they break them down, and then they start to fill up with iron. Well, what's happened is that those macrophages, those professional Pac-Men, need to have that ferroxidase enzyme. Because if they don't have that ferroxidase enzyme, then they start to they get really big with iron, and they lose their functionality. They lose their true north of what they're supposed to do. And they're supposed to be managing the immune system, then toggling between inflammation and wound repair. And when they've got too much iron, they can't think. And this, I'm not making this stuff up. This is a leading edge theory of three prominent clinicians. One, Nancy Andrews, who's the former dean of medicine at Duke University. Second is Rebecca King, who's a world-renowned pathologist at Mayo Clinic. And the third is Marianne Wesling-Resnick, who's a leading biologist and geneticist at Harvard School of Public Health. So these are not like, this is not like Bob Jones down the street, just like, I think it's this problem. These are some of the smartest people on the planet studying this. And the tragedy is this leading edge thinking isn't going to make its way into the medical classroom for another 40 years.
Yeah.
And people we don't have 40 years.
No.
We don't have 4 years. The tragedy that I'm seeing is this acceleration of chronic disease is so great. And people are waking up to the reality of the fact that the system is completely bankrupt and has no real solutions. And the reason why they don't have solutions is they don't know what copper is. They don't know what magnesium is, and they think everyone's anemic. And so what are they doing? They're pumping people full of iron. They're pumping people full of vitamin D because they don't understand how vitamin D metabolism keys off of magnesium status. And when you start pumping people full of vitamin D, guess what it does? It destroys vitamin A status in the body.
They're tied together.
So then they're absolutely tied. They're biological antagonists. And we're taught, like circus bears, to revere vitamin D. Well, no. Vitamin A runs circles around vitamin D. And what's really quite entertaining is you can't metabolize vitamin D without magnesium. And you can't make the vitamin D receptor work without a key nuclear receptor called RXR that's made from retinol. And the average person doesn't know that. Certainly the average practitioner doesn't know that. And what does retinol, get it? Eyes. And the sunlight hits our eyes, and that's what activates the ability to make vitamin D. That's pretty important, right?
I like that.
Yeah. But it also breaks down vitamin A into its component parts, which is really important. So we need that sunlight to both synthesize and make vitamin D, but we also need that sunlight to catabolize and break down our vitamin A so it can regulate our body.
I like that. Morley, this is just great stuff. We have lots of questions in the chat room. This is amazing. A lot of people asking questions, and I think when we come back from the break, we'll ask some of those questions. Jojo was saying, asking where to get that particular enzyme. And so got a lot of quick questions for you when we come back. Let me bring up something really cool from his website that I want to show you guys from the rootcauseprotocol.com. Pretty interesting. If you guys are listening on the podcast version, it's really interesting. So phase 0 of the root cause protocol says, stop taking iron supplements, kind of what we're talking about here. Stop taking vitamin D3 supplements. Stop taking calcium supplements. Stop taking zinc supplements. Stop taking molybdenum supplements. Stop taking drugstore once a day multivitamins or prenatals, as well as ascorbic acid, citrate, citric acid, and food supplements. Stop using high fructose corn syrup and synthetic sugars. Stop using industrialized omega-6 oils like soybean oil and canola oil. Stop using fluoride. Stop using colloidal silver as an antibiotic. stop eating low-fat, high-carb, processed, refined foods, and then start taking mineral drops, start taking the adrenal cocktail, the whole vitamin C complex, magnesium, cod liver oil, and vitamin E complex, which is contains about 8 complexes. So pretty fascinating stuff. If you guys have any questions in the chat room, the best way to do that is when we come back from this break really quickly, I'm going to read some of those questions to Morley, and but put them all in capitals so that I can see them and make sure to ask them. I did want to let you guys know, have you guys taken a look at the Stockton Aloe 1 product yet in our store? Talk about like a powerhouse of nutrients and vitamins and minerals, over 75 different active compounds like enzymes, amino acids, unique sugars like polysaccharides. This stuff is amazing. It might be one of the healthiest foods, in my opinion, on the planet, and it's antibacterial, it's antifungal, it's antiviral. But what's interesting about aloe vera is that the most powerful sort of component of it is something called ace-mannan, which is an immune stimulator. So this ace-mannan helps to induce macrophages, which is what Morley was just talking about, to produce interferon in the body and interleukins and tumor necrosis factor A. And so this aloe vera is incredible. The problem with aloe vera is it's difficult to procure, easy to grow though, but it's challenging because if you grow it, you got to cut it fresh, and you got to keep it healthy, and it's hard to grow the big thick ones that you need. Stockton Aloe 1 is the only one that I've seen on the market that doesn't have all these excipients and different tag-alongs and different ingredients in them. A lot of the ones you see at the health food store have all these other ingredients, and this is just pure aloe vera that's hand harvested, and it's unfiltered, it's raw, it's unprocessed, unheated. There's no preservatives or chemicals, and they ship it immediately. And they won't even ship on the weekends because they don't want this stuff dying on you. And so aloe vera, incredibly important for digestion, your gut health, anti-inflammatory. It's one of the best superfoods on the market. And this is a great way to get it. You just, they ship it to you fresh frozen, and you thaw it out overnight, and then you just drink some every day. You could drink a therapeutic dose, or you could drink 6-8 ounces a day if you like. This stuff will just change your digestion. It's amazing stuff. I highly recommend this stuff. And then I also wanted to let you guys know too, this is something that we've been using over the past probably about year and a half, is the Omica Organics 12-stage RO water system. And we've gotten to know Rafi, who's the owner over there at Omica Organics. And there's thousands, up to 24,000 different chemicals in our tap water. And crazily enough, there's parasites and homeopathic residues of chemotherapy and tampons, and there's so much going on in our tap water, and they try to give it back to us. And it's got chlorine, chloramine, aluminum. It's got so many chemicals in it. The good thing about this Omica is we use this underneath our kitchen sink, and it's a 12-stage RO system. So it lowers the total dissolved solids, but what's also really important about it is that it lowers the acids in the water as well. And we really love this company. We love Omica Organics, and we love what Rafi's doing. This thing, it gets rid of aluminum, arsenic, chloramine, chromium. It gets rid of fluoride, antimony, lead, TDS, radioactive particles, volatile organic compounds, asbestos, bacteria, nitrites, dirt, odors, radium, rust, viruses. I mean, this thing is pretty awesome. So if you're looking for a really good water filter for your home, I recommend this Omica Organics. You can get it in our store, and there's a 10% discount as well. So if you email me, I can give you a 10% discount on this as well. And I like to use their shower system, their whole house shower system as well. And they're just doing good stuff. I really like what they're doing over there. And let me bring up Morley back on the show, and let's see really quickly if we can see any chat room questions. I know that Jojo Bach was asking where to get this enzyme, ATPase7. So let me turn on Morley's microphone here, and let's bring me up there.
Yeah.
There we go.
I want to get me some of that there.
Yeah,
ATP
right.
stuff. Yeah, you don't buy it. You got to make it. That's what
you got to make it. Okay. Yeah. So how do you make it?
we again we got lots of bacteria and critters in our body that do just incredible heavy lifting for us. We
Interesting.
just need
Okay.
to feed them. That's
Okay.
really, I mean, the reason why that protocol starts with stop taking vitamin D and calcium and iron and zinc.
Mm-hmm.
Those three minerals, iron, calcium, and zinc,
Uh-huh.
in a supplemental form, are poison to the human body. They're not designed to build us up and make us strong. They're not going to do that.
So why are
And
they poisonous? What do they do?
they just they're not forms that we can metabolize.
Okay.
Again, the recommendations are based on science that's a little, it's very artfully drawn out.
Crafted.
Let's just
Yeah.
leave it at that. Yeah, crafted,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And again, people, I tease people about 1984.
Mm-hmm.
It was written in 1948, right?
Right.
And where black became white and white became black. Guess
Exactly.
what, folks? We're living that. We're there. We're 35 years post 1984. Let's start stepping into that and realizing that what we're being told by the system may not be in our best interest. And we have to do better research.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. Because if it were, I mean, everything really, Morley, we all know this, right? It's all about money, and the studies and all the different studies are designed to make a profit for the companies. And so, since we know that, like what you're saying, is that we need to look much deeper as to what they're telling us, right? We need to go deeper than what they're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
I remember it was around it was probably about the time I was assigned to do this work, about
Uh-huh.
2009 or 10. I was at a Health Freedom Expo, and Dick Gregory was one of the speakers,
Mm-hmm.
and he really challenged the group. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, if you're an animal, you're of great value to the farmer when you're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a human, you're of most value to the system when you're sick."
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard that, I turned to Dr. Liz, who happened to be with me. I said, "That's a disgusting thought.
Isn't
I'm
it?
going to see if he's telling the truth." And that was one of the motivators to get me to really dig deep to see what's going on in our system. And
Uh-huh.
it was not pretty as I got into it. So
Right.
I think that people don't realize, and they don't, it conjures up a lot of cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
And we lose a lot of magnesium when we realize maybe the system's out to get us.
Mm-hmm.
That's a scary thought.
It is. Yeah,
And
I know there's a book. I'm sure you're familiar with Matthias Rath's work and some of his work
Sure.
with regards to cancer and how the industry, the cancer industry works. And I remember him saying years ago that there are more people now that are living off of cancer than are living with it, which is just
Right.
crazy, right?
So speaking of that real quick,
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows about Otto Warburg and cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, he get the Nobel because he discovered cancer. No,
Right.
that's not what he did. he was studying copper and iron metabolism in his lab in Berlin in the late 1920s.
So that's
In
what
the
he was
19
studying.
Oh
Interesting.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
And he was doing his work with a colleague of his by the name of Krebs. You ever heard of Dr. Krebs?
Yep. Yep.
Hans Krebs of the Krebs cycle.
Uh-huh.
So Krebs was working with Warburg, and in 1927 they did this very famous study with birds, and they bled the birds almost to the point of death because they wanted to see what are these birds going to do when they're really truly anemic. They
Mm-hmm.
were really intrigued by it. They wanted to see how the body responded to that kind of iron loss.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And what shocked them, and what should shock your listeners, was that they discovered that the body responds by producing copper enzymes by 3 to 6-fold greater than the iron was that was in the blood. And what they learned from that, this is very important. What they learned from that was that copper regulates iron. But they very quickly brushed it under the carpet, not to let anybody know that. And then in 1931, Warburg gets the Nobel Prize for discovering what's called the respiratory enzyme. We know it today as complex 4 of the mitochondria. Its formal name is cytochrome deoxidase.
Mm-hmm.
But what did Dr. Krebs call, or excuse me, what did Dr. Warburg call it? He called it iron oxidase to throw everybody off. It's actually run by 3 copper atoms, and the electrons that flow through that complex are kissing the copper, and they don't touch the iron.
Mm-hmm.
But he called it iron oxidase. And I think it's one of that to me is where the whole train came off the tracks, was from that study in 1927. That, I mean, I've purchased the article, I've translated it from German into English, so I've read it very carefully, and it's very obvious what was going on. And copper is in fact regulating iron. And what is cancer? All cancer is it's an overwhelming amount of iron in the mitochondria and an inability of the copper to activate the oxygen as it's supposed to. And people may know of the Warburg effect, where in cancer, what happens is the cell goes anaerobic.
Mm-hmm.
Even though oxygen's present, it goes anaerobic. Well, the reason why it goes anaerobic is the copper isn't bioavailable anymore. It's the only way to explain it. And it's just, people need to learn the details as it relates to these minerals, because then they can gain mastery over their issues.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I've written like 75 different posts on iron toxicity, trying to explain different facets of this so that I understand it, so that other people can understand it, because it's absolutely fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the absolute antithesis of what we're led to believe on the internet or our doctor's office.
Morley, what would be a good book that you would recommend for someone to learn about all this stuff? Because this is sort of like the invisible processes that happen behind the scenes that are causing the body to do certain things that we don't know about yet in Western medicine. So what are some good books to learn that you've learned from with regards to minerals and what all this stuff that you're talking about is?
Well, the book I mentioned, The Magnesium Miracle.
Okay.
Another really good book about magnesium is The Magnesium Factor by Andrea Rosenoff and Mildred Seeley. For people who are interested in copper, there's a book that I've just come upon. Hopefully you can see this, The Biochemistry of Copper. It's an amazing book. I've just come across it.
Okay.
Wonderful explanation. Not for the faint of heart. It's got a lot of dense material in there.
Okay.
A good author for people to really understand copper metabolism. His name is Leslie, middle initial M as in Mike, Clavey, K as in kitchen, Levay. He's an MD, PhD. He's now retired. But Dr. Clavey is probably one of the most insightful about magnesium, one of the most efficient in his writing style, but one of the most powerful in terms of connecting the dots. So he's a very, very important writer. And then people who are interested in iron, the book that I would encourage them to read, it's by, my mind's having a little brain fart right now, Dr. Moon, Jim Moon, Jym, MOON, PhD. He just recently passed away about a year ago, and it's called Iron, the Most Toxic Metal. And that book will absolutely galvanize your followers to learn more about this. It's an amazing book, and there's a lot of truth in that book that people are going to find very upsetting. And Dr. Weinberg is a famous iron researcher at University of Indiana, but amazing truths in that book. They started adding iron filings to our food system in 1941.
Wow.
Most people don't know that.
Yeah.
And so the Second World War, they're dropping bombs over England, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so at the same time, they started adding iron filings to the wheat flour in England, Canada, the U.S., and there's some speculation also Australia. And we've never been the same since. And
Wow.
that was the start of the assault. And then about 10 years later, our esteemed leader, Eisenhower,
Mm-hmm.
had a heart attack, right? And when Eisenhower had a heart attack, the nation was put on a low-fat diet by Ansel Keys
Mm-hmm.
because we knew that cholesterol caused heart disease,
Yeah, we
right?
knew it. Yeah.
Wink, wink. We knew that, right?
Right.
And so 65 years later, 65 years it took to write the definitive article by Raznikov and Diamond,
Uh-huh.
just published in 2016, that said that that this cholesterol issue is a scam. It
Uh-huh.
always was a scam.
Right.
It was that what they never told people, it was the rusting of the cholesterol that was the problem. Well, what was causing the rust? The iron in our diet.
Mm.
People don't realize that they when I say iron filings, I'm being quite sincere about that. It's inorganic iron. So that the iron that we absorb the most is called heme iron.
Mm-hmm.
That's animal meat. We absorb about 30 to 40% of that. Then the non-heme iron, which we get in grains and produce,
Mm-hmm.
you might get anywhere from 5 to 20% of
Okay.
that. Inorganic iron, we absorb it more than we do heme iron. It goes into the digestive tract absolutely very quickly, which
Really?
is a little frightening to think about.
Yeah.
And so it starts to build up in our gut because there's cells down there called enterocytes.
Mm-hmm.
That's where food enters our body. It's called the enterocytes. And guess what? That ferrooxidase enzyme's got to let it out. But if it's not there, if we don't have enough bioavailable copper and retinol in our diet, and most people don't, because when Dr. Keys took the cholesterol out of our diet, he took the retinol out of our diet
Mm.
because retinol is found in animal tissue. What is fat? It stands for from animal tissue. And most people eat a low-fat diet.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who do eat fat today, they're very proud of their fat intake. Well, I eat a lot of avocados and coconut
Coconut.
oil
Yeah.
and olive oil. Well, guess what? There's no retinol in any of those. Even though the word avocado begins with the letter A, it has no retinol. And so people are completely blindsided by the fact that yes, they're getting oil in their diet,
Right.
but no fat.
Okay.
And that's where when and maybe this is in a subsequent conversation, but to really delve into the role that nuclear receptors play in gene transcription, there's no gene defects. That's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's an analogy. I'm sure you've seen a construction site,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you didn't know this, but in the corner of the construction site, there's a blueprint, and the building builds itself. Did you know that? That's how they go up. They put the blueprint over in the corner, and the most amazing thing is that the building just builds itself. Or that's what they want us to believe.
Right.
And so that inside our cells, but we know how the building's built. There's a shack with a construction foreman who's wearing glasses, right?
Right.
And turns out that inside our cells, the construction foreman is called copper, and the glasses are called retinol. And it's absolutely fascinating the role that the RXR receptor plays to hook up to VDR, LXR, FXR. There are like a dozen different nuclear receptors, and PPAR from the peroxisome. And if
Mm-hmm.
these other nuclear receptors aren't synced up with the RXR, nothing happens.
Yeah.
And then we're told, oh, you got a broken gene. Sorry, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to, I don't know, blow you apart or whatever. It's like,
Right.
and because we don't know about this detail, we get scared And we believe that. And then you start to give people beef liver, whole food vitamin C, which are great sources of bioavailable copper, give them cod liver oil. And the most amazing thing, their body says, whoa, thank you. I love that. I know exactly what to do with it.
Uh-huh.
And it's like the human body is an absolute amazing machine,
Oh my gosh. Right?
but you got
Yeah.
to feed it right.
You got to feed it right.
And,
Yeah.
and,
Hey,
and you
Morley,
can't feed it wrong.
we have a ton of questions coming in from the chat room, and I see from our time that we're at about 55 minutes. Would you be okay to answer sort of rapid fire a handful of questions from the chat room?
Happy to do it.
Okay.
I'll do my best.
Okay. Yeah. Let's try to keep them short because there's quite a bit. And for those that are watching, we do broadcast 3 days a week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with a lot of people, and we have great guests on every 3 times a week. So make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or to us on Instagram or wherever else you're seeing this. Okay, so Morley, let's go rapid fire here. What are the top three symptoms of iron toxicity?
Iron toxicity would be fatigue.
Okay.
Immune challenges like autoimmune and Lyme disease.
Okay.
That's going to surprise people.
Okay.
And cancer.
Okay, good one. Jess says, how long would you recommend, spending time outside, even in the winter months on sunny days, in order to get that vitamin D you were talking about?
Maybe 5 to 10 minutes of the rising sun or the setting sun. You don't need to be stark naked at the equator for 2 days. That's all mythology. You just need to stimulate the receptors in the eye and look at the sunlight, or look at the sun as it's rising. Before 9 o'clock would be the best time to look at it. And just spend 5 to 10 minutes blinking your eyes while you're doing it. It's absolutely fascinating.
Okay. Let's see here. Let's get the next question. This one is from Facebook. Where do you get the mineral drops?
A lot of different sources. Anderson's has good mineral drops. There's Aussie Minerals. Trace Minerals Research. I mean, there's several different sources. And what I wanted to point out with your RO system, make sure you're putting mineral drops back into your water, especially for what you're cooking and drinking with.
Right. Yeah, it does. It does have that built into it actually, which is pretty cool. So,
okay.
Okay, and let me just try to find out some of the best questions here.
Should we give a prize for the best question?
I know, right? There's a question about one of the products. I forgot it was like a C product, and they found out that there was a fluoride in it, and they're trying to ask and wondering what to do about that. It was like a C mineral drop kind of a product, and but fluoride is in the ingredients, and so I'm assuming that's an issue. Do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, certainly fluoride is not our friend, but it does exist in nature. Again, it's all about the amount. I don't know what the product is. I don't know what the dose is. It's something that certainly bears more research to find out what the amount is.
Okay. Magical Hoof says, some say that you can substitute iron for copper in our blood. I believe iron is what causes liver congestion. This is kind of what you were talking about.
But what people need to understand is that there's a very specific axiom. When there isn't enough copper or it is not bioavailable, iron loads in the liver and the heart and eventually in the kidney. That's an established scientific fact. And it will not show up in the blood test because it's been put in storage because of the inflammation caused by that buildup of iron. And the body always responds to inflammation by storing iron in the tissue. Established scientific fact.
Okay, let's see. There's sort of a comment here. This information will be important for my mother. One of the many problems is low iron, also sleep apnea and asthma, and lifelong high blood pressure. So are those all correlated conditions as well?
Absolutely. High blood pressure is a clinical sign of copper deficiency.
Okay.
And the sleep apnea is also related to low copper, low bioavailable copper. And then the low iron in the blood means that there's high iron in the tissue because of low copper, not allowing the enzyme for the recycling system.
So get this, Morley. This is interesting from the chat. One of this person's doctors said that they should not stress the liver with exposing himself to the sun and also avoid fats. That's coming from a doctor.
No comment.
No comment. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's like what you're saying. We're 40 years behind. How is this guy
No,
a
it's just
doctor recommending that,
no. The tragedy is basic nutrition. These axioms that we've been talking about for the last hour are not taught in any practitioner school that I know of. I mean, I'd love to do it. I'd love to put together a module,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not available. And
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about the fundamental mechanisms of how the body regulates oxidative stress.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
profound.
Jojo says or asks,
She's back.
I bought chelated copper, 5 milligrams. Took 2 days in a row, and I threw up soon after. Any idea why? That's hard
Because
to
that
know.
was not, it was probably a copper 2, even though it was chelated. You're much better off getting grass-fed beef liver or
Okay.
desiccated liver
Okay.
and getting innate response whole food vitamin C tablets. Those are much better sources of copper. What people don't realize is that ascorbic acid is the antioxidant shell of a multi-part enzyme complex. And inside that whole food vitamin C is an enzyme called tyrosinase, an incredibly important enzyme. And tyrosinase is a three-sided pyramid with copper at all 4 points, 3 at the base and 1 at the top. And that tyrosinase enzyme is delivering copper in very specific ways to the tissue that needs the copper that needs to be loaded.
Okay. Good stuff. Okay. So we have.
Supplemental copper is usually a bad form of copper in
Yeah,
most
you want it from
cases.
your food. Yeah. Danny says if one does consume dairy, is it best to have your own animals and directly from the farm. They have beneficial bacteria that is destroyed on commonly sold dairy products. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a
And make sure
fan of dairy?
that they're, excuse me?
Are you a
I'm
fan
sorry.
of dairy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't go goofy about it, but I
Uh-huh.
think dairy needs to be part of the diet, especially heavy cream and grass-fed butter are very important
Okay.
because they're important sources of retinol. Very important sources of retinol.
Okay. Um, Another question, Himalayan Shilajit has bioavailable minerals as well. Do you recommend those?
I'm not familiar with them.
Okay.
I'd be happy to research them and take a look at them, but I'm not. I've never worked with them.
Okay. Fair enough. Final question. Do you believe in organite energy made with copper?
Um, I'm not as familiar with that as I am with like the red light technology with Jerry Tennant
Uh-huh.
or with laser technology that has red light. What people need to understand is that the red light it's basically an electronic crutch for copper. Copper inside our body, inside that mitochondrial enzyme, is creating red light. That's how the cells communicate with each other. Again, cellular communication. They're talking to each other, and they communicate with light, and they like red light. Red light is a very healthy form of light, and that red light is what prevents oxidative stress from building inside the mitochondria. So that organite might be a very effective way of doing it. I just know that there are other forms that are proven themselves to be very effective to help people recover. And it's a great crutch to have that source of red light, but ultimately we need to have it in our diet and in our regular nutrient dense supplements so that we can begin to develop it ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And obviously that red light is going to be one of the frequencies one of the 1,500 different frequencies that are in the sun. But do you use any red light devices yourself, anything like that to help with this process?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you certainly can use them. You can get lasers or you can get red light therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think, again, we get into the debate about near infrared versus far infrared.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the red light therapy is very important. But I think what people need to understand is that in it's especially important for bodies that have low bioavailable copper, which most people have today. People don't realize how deficient we are in minerals in general, but especially in these two minerals that are particularly important, magnesium and copper. And we are swimming in iron, and then we don't have enough retinol. It's tragic how little retinol people have in their diet.
Mm-hmm. Morley, we're wrapping up on the end of the interview, but I'm going to bring up as I say this, I'm going to bring up your website here, the Root Cause Protocol. And I know that you have like a Facebook group too, which a lot of people are ranting and raving about. But tell people a little bit about what's at this website and where they could get these protocols and start, beginning this journey of everything you're talking about today.
Yeah, no, it's a website that's devoted to the protocol, and you can just learn about the protocol itself, the stops and the starts. There's a video series that people can partake in. That's me talking with a classically trained allopathic physician over in Texas. We're talking for 4.5 hours about this and answer a lot of questions. There are a lot of testimonials on the site. There is additional information. The website's actually in the process of being really built out, and they can still get a lot of information, but I think in about 2 weeks, people, I think, are going to be blown away by what they can get access to. But it's just a great resource. And then, as you mentioned, the magnesium advocacy group. I'm hoping that ranting and raving is a good thing.
Yeah.
But we had about 1,000 people a week to the mag group. And
That's great.
it's a very different approach than you'll find on most internet sites and in most conversations with practitioners, because we're really getting down to the root of the issue, which is minerals and activating enzymes. And we're trying to eliminate the symptoms by getting the minerals to activate those key enzymes.
This is fascinating. I'm looking at your class curriculum. So if you guys are listening to this, you may want to check this out as a podcast or wherever you're hearing this. But at the rootcauseprotocol.com, you can sign up for it. And it's got 101 videos. And it looks like, my goodness, you have so much information here. Morley, it's so interesting. We have an academy ourselves called the Extreme Health Academy. And it's what's crazy to me, it kind of annoys me, kind of like how you were telling me before we started the show. You're annoyed at the or angry at the current food paradigm. I really wish that you and I didn't have to create these academies and these programs, because all of this stuff should be taught in school, right?
Well, sure.
It's crazy.
The way I describe it is
that
what we've been talking about should be taught in two locations, two schools of higher education.
Yeah.
Kindergarten and medical school.
Right. Yeah.
And I would love to partner with you, Justin, to find out how we could sync up our approaches, because I think there's a lot of good that can come from the wisdom that we both bring. And I think people need this foundational knowledge of how their cells work and their tissue, and then you can begin to build on that. And it's a pretty interesting platform to spring off of.
And this is what's so great about online learning, is that there are processes that the medical industry just doesn't know what they are or why they work a certain way. And at least on a physical level, it's not counting a spiritual, emotional level, but at least on the physical plane, we have these things that are happening, right? So people have what's called like high blood pressure, and then they can take a medication to artificially lower a number that has been given a label, but in the background, the inflammatory process is still happening. We just lowered artificially a number. And so we think, oh, my blood pressure is now lowered. But it sounds to me like what you're talking about, Morley, is the minerals interacting with each other in our bodies is what's actually this invisible process that's happening that we have no idea how it works.
There's a gigantic curtain, I call it the iron curtain, that hides all of this. And the locomotive of allopathic medicine runs on two rails: magnesium deficiency and iron toxicity. And just like any railroad track you've ever seen, those rails don't touch, but they're bolted together.
Mm-hmm.
And I can assure you that doctors are very dependent on iron toxicity, wink, wink, and they call it anemia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they genuinely know what's going on with the blood test. I truly don't think they have the level of, I don't think they're malicious at all. I
Right.
think they've been horrifically trained,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they have the curiosity of a gnat,
Mm-hmm.
because people are getting sicker, faster, younger, and that's not natural. That's not normal, but it's become the norm. And I think people need to really step back and start asking more basic questions. An example I think is a particularly good one is there's a new documentary out called The Magic Pill. Pete Evans down in Australia
Mm-hmm.
has put this together. And there's a really powerful cameo appearance by a physician from the UK. His name is Rangan Chatterjee. And he asks one question. And he says, I wish more of my colleagues would ask this question of their patients. What are you eating? And it's a really amazing
Wow.
documentary about delving into why we're so sick because we're eating the standard food, standard American diet. And our four favorite food groups are boxed, frozen, round, and fast. Those are
Right.
the four favorite food groups. And basically, what this documentary does is it explains why it's killing us.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have to stop and say, wait a minute, my my ancestors didn't have these problems. Why
Mm-hmm.
do we have these problems? And
Right.
it's really the food system has been adulterated, but the minerals especially have been decimated.
Mm-hmm.
And we just need to start to return to that.
Yeah. Two final questions, Morley. You talk about iron toxicity. Before I forget both of these questions and we sign off for the day, how does one get rid of iron toxicity? And are you a fan of males, at least men, donating blood?
Uh, the fastest way, let me back up. There's only one way to get rid of excess iron in the human body, and that is with blood loss.
Okay.
And so women have a biological advantage over men
Mm-hmm.
because they have a monthly blood loss. And so during that period that they're menstruating, they don't have some of the same diseases that guys get. So that I think blood donations they're very important, especially for men. Any man over the age of 40 should be donating on a quarterly basis. I
Quarterly
think
basis?
guys on a quarterly basis,
Okay.
and I encourage my women who are still having a menstrual cycle to donate twice a year, and then when they become menopausal, quarterly, 4 times a year.
Interesting.
It the two easiest ways to improve your health: unplug your microwave and donate blood on a regular basis.
Ah, that's
And
so
it
interesting.
it gets rid of a lot of excess iron. But what it also does, it's absolutely fascinating. The process of that blood loss triggers a hormone called EPO. That's the drug that the athletes want. They want more red blood cells.
Mm-hmm.
So EPO makes more red blood cells. But what it also does is it recruits iron that's being stored in that tissue. It forces the iron out of the tissue. It's a
Interesting.
very important part of the process, and it gets the recycling system to kickstart itself again. It's very,
Okay.
very important.
Yeah, this is fascinating. Gosh, there's so many questions. So, since you just brought that up, is there an amount that one, like an average person, like a male, let's say they're 5'10", 160 pounds, should donate? And should they check their ferritin levels and check all their blood levels before they do something like this, do you think?
Um, I've put together a blood test that I call the Full Monty Iron Panel,
Okay.
and people can get it off of Request a Test or Ulta Wellness. And there's 12 different parts to that blood test. the greatest error that's made in blood chemistry is to base a decision off of one marker called ferritin. So I've renamed it errortin, ERRORTIN.
Right.
And it is the most misleading, misrepresentative marker for blood or for iron status.
Okay.
And people should never, ever allow a practitioner to make a decision based on ferritin. It's a wicked situation. So, are you at the request a test?
Yeah, yeah.
There should be over on the left-hand side. There should be a toolbar that says all test packages. Looks like they might have redone their website. Yeah, go to test packages.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay.
And then there's an alphabet menu. Go to M, letter M for Maggie.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
See the full Monty panel with vitamin A and D.
With A and D. Okay. So that's only $260. That's not too bad.
But I want people to know that 100% of that goes to the lab. I don't see a penny of that, but I put it together just because. And I've developed this in the UK, in Australia, in Sweden or Norway. We've got different of my associates who've really pulled together to get these blood tests in different parts of the world now.
Interesting. So the question is then, when you get the results, then how do you read them? That's always the question, right?
That's the question, right? It's a famous joke with the plumber. When he fixes the problem within 30 seconds and then hands the person a bill for $100. And he says, wait a minute, you're only here for 30 seconds. So he takes the bill back and scratches it out and says, part, $1, knowing where the part needed to be replaced, $99. So
yeah.
I've trained 150 people out there to help people interpret their blood tests and their hair tests. And there needs to be discernment. The understanding what the norms are, understanding what the healthy ranges are, as you well know, is something very different than what the blood test laboratory reports look like. And so it's not rocket science, and I don't want to make it seem like it's something really difficult.
Right.
But it's something that needs to be a conversation needs to take place, and I think people need to be able to engage in that dialogue to better understand what's going on.
Well, Morley, you've given us a lot to think about as a community, and I'm glad that you're doing the work that you're doing. It's really fascinating stuff. And obviously, the website is going to be gotmag.com or the Root Cause Protocol for people to learn more, right?
Gotmag.org is the magnesium site, the rootcauseprotocol.com, or the magnesium advocacy group. And for people who want to reach out to me, I'll give them my email. It's morleyrobbins@gmail.com. And I always give out my cell phone, which it causes people to get heartburn, but it's 847-922-8061. And I'll just end it by saying that I've never met a question I didn't enjoy.
I like it. Wow, Morley, you're awesome, man. It's we kind of bounced around a little bit, with the listener questions in the chat room, but I think that we got some good ones in, and I'm glad that you're doing the work that you're doing. And thank you for your time today. And let's do this again, because I feel like we barely even laid a foundation. And it looks like, with 101 videos in your course, there's not much we can do in like an hour conversation like this, but the whole point of this show is to let people know that people like you are out there, and there are resources, and that they can then go further and dive into your work. So, Morley, thank you for being on. You're amazing. Thank you again, and I'll be in touch via email.
I look forward to that. I think it'll be a lot of fun to continue the dialogue.
Let's do it. All right, Morley, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Take care. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All righty. There you go, Mr. Morley Robbins. He generated quite the controversy in the chat rooms. Let me take my thing off because I don't like these things in my ear for longer than I need to have them in. But what do you guys think? I know many of you guys are probably here as a result of Morley being sharing this show with his audience, but pretty interesting stuff, right? You know what I find most interesting about a guy like him is that he had an experience in his life like a frozen shoulder, and something relatively innocuous, like it's not that big a deal, right? I mean, it's not like, you know, stage 4 cancer with 3 days to live. But when he went and got work done, it was really interesting because as a result of that, most people would say, oh, okay, you know, maybe there's other alternatives out there, or maybe there are other things I don't know about. But for a guy like him to actually change his entire career, being a hospital administrative position for 32 years, to continue to go down the rabbit trail, that is what's fascinating to me about a guy like him. And I really like what he said about vitamin D and getting your vitamin D from the sun. And that really, really ties into the work of Dr. Jack Kruse, the neurosurgeon who speaks about light. And it ties in perfectly with him because according to Dr. Kruse, we have these systems, these coupled systems within our physiology, within our bodies. And when you take an exogenous substance for something that the body is supposed to make endogenously, you decouple those systems in the body. And so what happens as a result is that you're unable to produce vitamin D and the systems don't work properly. And it's really tricky because when you have something like vitamin D or magnesium that affect thousands upon thousands of different enzymatic processes in the body, if you take vitamin D or something like that that we're supposed to generate within ourselves, if you take that exogenously for many, many years, you're going to start decoupling the systems and your body's not going to work well. And so it makes sense. It's tied to nature. Everything is tied to nature. And I like what he said about that, getting vitamin D in the eyes. And like he was saying, first morning sun, you know, it's really, really important to get that first morning sun in the eyes. And so I'm curious what you guys thought about this show. This is kind of a fun part of the show for me because I get to hang out with you guys and go back and forth and talk about whatever you guys are chatting about in the chat room. And this is a fun part for me to be able to sort of interact with you guys like that. So did you like Morley Robbins? Do you agree with him? It's interesting because you know, I believe his work, I believe his work directly opposes the work of Dr. Lawrence Wilson, who was on our show, years ago. And this is the issue, is that we have people like Morley Robbins on the show, and then we have someone like Dr. Lawrence Wilson on the show, and they're saying completely different things, right? So you say, okay, one guy says to eat meat, the other guy says to be vegan. What do you do, right? So this all comes down to what we need and the connection within ourselves, and how much we trust our gut, right? Because at the end of the day, there's going to be 100 Morley Robbins. There's going to be 100 Jack Cruises. There's going to be 100 Dr. John Bergmans. There's going to be 100 Lawrence Wilsons, and they're all going to have their opinion. Jojo Bach is responding to someone else that says, your doctor is ill-informed. So the idea here with Extreme Health Radio is to let us know that we have a lot more control over our disease process and our physiology than we think. You know, the culture at large really wants to drill into you the point that genes are the end-all be-all, and genes are what causes us to be sick. And it was interesting, before we started the show, before I hit record with Morley today, he was sharing with me about some of his ideas about how the food process is purposefully set this way, and he really looks into a lot of different issues, and he can go down different rabbit trails. And this is what I find really interesting about a guy like him, is that for me, it's the same way. The more you bring minerals into your life and into your mind, the more those synapses begin to fire in your brain, and you start making connections between seemingly unrelated pieces of research, and you start connecting all the dots. And that's really what happens, because you create the electrical pathways for the brain and the nervous system and the different systems of your body to be able to communicate to each other. And when you do that, you start to become an enlightened being, and you start to put pieces of the puzzle together that you probably never thought were we're connected. And that's sort of the role of the culture today, is to disempower you, but then also make you feel like everything is disconnected from something else. That's why you have a knee doctor. That's why you have a foot doctor. That's why you have a heart doctor. That's why you have a chemo doctor. That's why you have a radiation doctor. That's why you have a cancer doctor. That's why you have all these different doctors, right? Different specialties, because they don't want to understand and let us know that the body's intricately connected. And we understand that the body's connected and works as a synergistic unit. Then we start really gaining our power back, because you start realizing that, hey, maybe if I do a treatment like acupuncture, where it connects the meridian systems of the body on an energetic level, on a deeper than physical level, maybe I can get results with that on some physical issue. And so when you start separating, it's like the assembly line. It's like companies that are contracted to work with NASA, or for the Raytheon and these types of companies that build machines for the war machine, right? They're working on top secret projects, and they don't want to let different parts know what they're doing, so that if in case something happens, they can always just shut everyone up and no one knows what's happening. And I think the same thing is happening with the human body, especially with doctors. And this is why they're specializing so much. And so when you truly get an integrative, holistic doctor who understands the entire physiology of the body, dude, you start really waking up and you start really understanding that, man, like there are answers to this thing, to these types of issues, because it's challenging. Because even within the natural or the alternative realm, a medical doctor, like someone who specializes in the digestion, is never gonna concede their knowledge to an orthopedic surgeon. But in the natural world, we understand that everything's connected, and so it's incredibly empowering, but also it's one of those things that it now requires us to put in the work. And so now you have to start actually doing the work and figuring out why the body's working a certain way. And like I was sharing on the show before, you're an animal. You're here. That's awesome. Cool. Good to have you. Julia's here. 635-5574 is here. So what happens is that we have these mechanistic approaches to our health where we try to artificially alter some random number like cholesterol. And on a physical level, we can say, oh, the cholesterol went up or the cholesterol went down, right? We can say these things. But really on a deeper spiritual level, behind the scenes, this process is still happening in the body. You're still having high cholesterol. It's just not showing up in the numbers anymore. So you have high cholesterol, if you have high blood pressure, and you take a drug to lower it, what you're doing is you're essentially it's like disengaging the electrical on your car so that it no longer gives you a warning signal. The problem's still there, right? The problem's still happening in the car, but you don't get a warning signal anymore. That's exactly what happens when you lower artificially these numbers, these arbitrary numbers that they've given you. And the only reason why they're doing that is because they can make money off these things. They can make money off the medication. Makes sense, right? Because like we were talking about before the show, all of this is designed to disempower you and to make as much money off you as they possibly can. That's what culture, that's why there's policemen. Policemen are just out there to create revenue for government. That's all it is. That's why there's laws. The laws aren't there to try to keep you safe. The laws are there to make money. That's why there's new laws every single year. There's thousands of new laws. They're there to make money. And so understanding that and realizing that we incarnated during a time when this was happening is half the battle, right? This is, half of understanding that we created this in some weird, bizarre way. We decided to come into this life during a time when this is all happening. But it's really great. So with the internet, we have the option of learning more and overcoming all of this stuff. And so that's why the medical system works the way it does, is because it's there to generate money. That's why they have these artificial numbers. But here's my thing with these things, right? With these types of cholesterol lowering drugs and all of this, high blood pressure and all this stuff, right? So when you go in and you get your blood tested by a medical doctor, when you do that, and they come back, the doctor walks in, and you're sitting down, and he's standing over you with his white coat, and he tells you, John or Bill, you have high blood pressure. Look at here on this piece of paper. Your blood pressure is supposed to be XYZ, and it's ABC. So we're going to recommend, and if you don't lower your cholesterol, then you could have some real issues, and studies are showing that people are dying because of this, and now you have this problem, right? But if blood tests are simply a snapshot in time, then even if they're showing you an accurate blood test, then it's not even worth going over with the doctor, because your blood pressure could have been risen during the time the test was taken, and then 99% of the time it's normal. And so I'm not even sure. I don't even believe anything of what they say. Show me my blood pressure as it is currently constituted in my body during multiple stressor phases of my life, and then I'll believe your numbers. But the numbers themselves are arbitrary numbers that they've come up with. So the whole thing is based on labels and numbers and levels and ratios. And if they can control those with a medication that they can sell to you, then they're going to make money. That's really what it's all about. So like I mentioned before during the show, if you guys are just coming in late, there's that book by Matthias Rath talking about the cancer industry. And when you start getting into this stuff, man, it really starts making you think and wonder. The doctors themselves, I can't vouch or speak for them. Many doctors are nice people, and they try hard, and they're out originally to help people. But man, the industry itself, highly suspect, the entire industry. And so let me scroll through some of your questions. If you guys are chatting up a storm here, this is cool. Let's see here. A bunch of car parts. Doctors have to go. Maria says doctors have to go back to school. Sun is necessary for health. That is true. Any doctor that tells you that sun is not necessary or that it will kill you is completely out to lunch. Cleopatra says killing animals is not the answer. Not sure what you're referring to. Jojo Box says, I'm a member of his Facebook group. Cool. I'm going to join up too, Jojo, after this as well. I know a basic eat a lemon in the morning and drink lots of water as a fast. Juliet says, I'm seeing a nutritionist supporting my detox pathways with diet and natural supplements and using glutathione. I couldn't do this alone. Her guidance is invaluable. Oh, that's great. Yeah, see, that's what it's all about, supporting ourselves, so that we can actually live the kind of life we're supposed to live, right? Get healthier, have more energy. You're an Animal says, if I'm not mistaken, the major problem with cholesterol is the small particle forms of it, which can be hyperoxidative. If too much small particle LDL or HDL is present with overall low cholesterol, the road to disease is paved. There's so many aspects as to what's going on with disease. There's so many different levels. Like today, all we focused on is one small part of the pie, and that's the physical aspect of disease, right? But there's a whole spiritual, emotional side to all of this as well that we've explored many times on our show that I think would be really, really helpful for people to listen to. Look into milk thistle, Julia says, for this, and Dr. Dan Pompa does a lot of cellular detox. Yeah, that's good. We might have him on the show. I've been familiar with Dr. Pompa's work for a long time. Let's see if you guys are saying anything over here. So I hope you guys enjoyed that show. That was cool. Next, we have another show on Wednesday. It's either going to be a Free For All Friday show, and if you guys were on our last Free For All Friday show, you know that we went a long time, and I never even got to any of the concepts that or the notes that I had. So maybe we'll do that on Wednesday, or we'll also try to get a guest. We might get the good folks from Amp Coil on the show. They said they wanted to take that Wednesday slot because we had a cancellation. So Yeah, so that was a cool show with Morley Robbins. I hope you guys enjoyed that. He's a cool guy. For those that don't know, we mentioned this a little bit during the show. Let me bring this up for you. You guys can take a look at our Extreme Health Academy. This academy is pretty cool. You guys are probably watching as well on Dr. John Bergman's YouTube channel, and we're working with Dr. John Bergman on the Extreme Health Academy. And we just released just yesterday this Deep Sleep Mastery course. This month we're doing another course. This is kind of a double course. We're doing another one on adrenal health, and that's going to be really fascinating. That's coming out later this month. We did the whole heart health course, autoimmune disease solutions, prevent and heal cancer naturally, building invincible immunity, balancing your hormones. I mean, imagine balancing your hormones and having high levels of hormonal health all the way into your 90s, 100s, and beyond, right? Imagine building invincible immunity. We are in the fall season right now in the Northern Hemisphere. I say that with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek. But we're in the fall season right now, and everyone's getting the cold. So how do you build your immunity? Go through this course, Build Invincible Immunity, Healing and Preventing Cancer, the complete guide to improving digestion. So, I mean, you start thinking about like autoimmune diseases, heart health. Heart health and cancer are the number 1 and number 2 diseases that people die from, heart health and cancer. And if you're on top of that, then you just eliminated the top 1 and 2 killers out there of people. So this is all stuff like I was telling the Morley during the show. Man, we need to be teaching this stuff in school instead of doing what we're doing to our school system. It's just really ridiculous. It's really, really ridiculous. And people should not be, going to school and learning all this useless information when you don't even know how to take care of the human frame. Our meat suit goes 75 years if we're lucky, riddled with disease for the last 10, burden on our family, burden on our society. And if we just taught people how to take care of themselves, we wouldn't need, imagine the social and economic impact if people lived an extra, even just 10 years without cancer, without heart disease, without a burden on their society. That's where we could be if we just educated people. And so it's unfortunate that we have to have like an Extreme Health Academy. It's unfortunate because it shows that our society's broken. It's unfortunate that Morley has to have a course about all this stuff. Stuff should be taught in schools, right? But that's just not the way it works. And you start getting into some of the nefarious sort of agendas that are happening out there in the world. You start realizing, man, it's they don't have your best interest in mind. And like he was saying, the best thing for them to do is to keep you sick, because they make a lot of money off you when you're sick. And when you're sick, you're desperate. And when you're desperate, you're controlled by fear. And when you're controlled by fear, they're basically the puppets, the puppeteers, and they can control your decisions because of fear. Fear is the number 1 motivator. And so for us, what we're trying to do is to get rid of fear, to educate. And through education comes empowerment. When you're empowered, you don't fear. Fear goes away with a lack of knowledge. And so when you're educated about something, you lose all of your fear. And then when you lose your fear of something, you can't be bullied by a doctor trying to tell you that there's only one way to heal from a certain disease, right? Because you know better, because you've educated yourself. And this is why education is more important than inspiration or motivation. Because if you're an idiot and you're motivated, now you're just a motivated idiot, right? So the key is to be educated. And this is where education on all levels comes in. And so this is why we're doing the show that we're doing, because ultimately at the end of the day, it empowers you to make decisions not based on fear. And so that's why we do the show that we do, because it takes the fear away from people. But schools are all about control. New things are not going to be found there. Teachers are interested in repeating the same crap, not in the true progress. That's true. Schools are a glorified, what's the right word? I'm trying to think of the word. not training ground, but a glorified way for people just to watch your kids while you're doing something else. Typically, the reason why we have to put our kids in school is because we're in debt and we have to work. But yeah, schooling system. You want a really education about the school system and the way it was set up. Watch on YouTube a 5-hour interview with the New York School Teacher of the Year. What is his name? John Taylor Gatto. And that will educate you really quick as to the agenda of the school system, the role of the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and the whole purpose of what schools are there for and why they were designed. So it's pretty fascinating 5-hour interview. I've watched it multiple times, and I usually watch stuff like this when I'm in my sauna. My head sticks out of the sauna, the one that's in our store, and so I get through a lot of material this way. I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know things, because in the totality of the universe, I probably know very, very little about what's actually going wrong. So 635574 says, do you know orthotropics? I don't. No, send me an email. Let me know what that is. Orthotropics? Interesting. Never heard of that before. Bob says you've got to exercise daily, calisthenics, yoga, etc. Yeah, a lot of hey, Supper Soul Gear. That's cool. Dr. Rath is one of the good guys on the planet. That's true. We're working on getting him on the show too. Dr. Matthias Rath. Jojo says, well, then my niece is a nurse, and she told her to take it or she could have had a heart attack. My goodness. Bob says 2-day fast, 1-day juice, green leafy vegetables with carrots, 5 times beta carotene and antioxidants. 2nd day protein shakes from plant protein 5 times. Yeah, it depends what Bob, it depends what you're going for. Fasts are incredible. Incentive creates the consequences. Yeah, but the incentive is fear. Fear is a powerful motivator. Maria says, great show, thank you. Yeah, you're so welcome, Maria. You're so welcome. That's why we do what we do. Because you know what? Ultimately, at the end of the day, what happens is that we live our life like they say. They say that we, spend our wealth trying to buy back our youth, when we're older, and we're trying to buy back our health. And so at the end of the day, what I don't want is for any of us to be sitting down in a doctor's office having a doctor explain to us how there's an X% chance of survival, right? We can avoid all of that. So taking control of your own physiology is one of the most important things you can do. And this is specifically why self-care is so important. Self-care is not something that you should avoid. And it's not selfish. Self-care is something that we should all be doing every single day, because the default nature of our current society is one in which it is designed to make us sick. If we don't take care of yourself, then just by living in today's modern culture, everything from light to pesticides to chemicals in our environment, to chemicals in our food, stress, money problems, all of it is designed to keep us sick, fearful, and controllable. And so that's why it's really important for all of us to take control of our biology. And we can do that. Doctors want to blame it on genes, but if you're familiar with the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, you know that it's epigenetic. It's epigenetic. And you realize that there are processes that control the genes. And even on a physical level, the mitochondria is what controls the genes, just on a physical level. There's invisible spiritual emotional processes that control the mitochondria. And so when you start going down this path and realizing you have a lot more control of your body than you think that you do, you start realizing that, man, it really opens the door up for you to how quickly can I overcome this disease, and how healthy can I become, or how long can I live, or how long could I live in a healthy body? Imagine being someone who's 120 years old, but you have the body of a 60-year-old. So I think that's possible. I really do. Let's see if you guys are saying anything. Renee is here. That's cool. My mom and my patient is on blood pressure meds. Yeah, and the reason why we take these chemicals that are sold to us is because of fear. Because we spend our entire life not learning how the body works. We live in this body for our whole life, and we spend our whole life running away from that knowledge, not interested in it, right? And then all of a sudden we become interested when something bad happens, and then we have something to do, and then they have something to sell you because they can do that. And fear, like I said, fear is a powerful motivator, you know? So there wouldn't be the premature aging disease if aging wasn't a symptom, not a natural way to be old. Yeah, I think that, man, this body that we have, it should be lasting. If you buy into the Christian worldview, it says in the book of Genesis that one of the curses God put on man was living till we're 120. And if we lived to 120 today, we'd be like, jumping through the roof. We'd be so excited, right? But that was the curse. And so our bodies are meant to live much longer than that. So we're doing something wrong, right? Like Morley was saying during the show that magnesium gets depleted. Magnesium gets depleted even by breathing and by blinking your eyes. You're using magnesium stores to do that. And so it's so necessary. And so, for us to really take control of our health and life, without health, you have nothing, right? You can't, if you love making money on Wall Street, you can't do that if you don't have a healthy body, right? If you love working on cars, you can't do that if you don't have a healthy body. If you love playing sports, you can't do that if you don't have a healthy body. If you love reading books about politics, you can't do that if you don't have a healthy body. Without a healthy body, you have nothing. So that's why it's so important for all of us to really put a new emphasis on taking care of this frame for multiple reasons, not just for yourself. I mean, no one wants to be, dying the last 20 years of your life, right? But do you really want to be a burden on your family? Do you want to be a burden on your society, economically or in any other way? Emotionally, do you want to be a burden on people at the end of your life? Or do you want to be like Elio Gracie, from the famous Gracie Jiu-Jitsu family, that died in his sleep at 96, training Jiu-Jitsu all the way up until he was 94. That's how we should go. That's how it's meant to be. Bob says Dr. Rhonda Patrick is great too. Yeah, we're working on getting her on the show too. I'm very familiar with her work. She's great. I love her. She's very scientific and in her approach, which is good, right? You got to have a little bit of science every now and then to balance out all the woo-woo that we talk about here. Do you think our show is woo-woo? I don't know. Some people say it might be, but I just know there's so much more going on in the physical body and on life and on planet Earth than we're being told. And so if that's woo-woo, then, oh well. Going to have a bath with some frankincense oil, cinnamon oil, sandalwood oil, cedarwood oil, a real hot soak for an hour for pain relief. Wow. That sounds like a great bath, doesn't it? Whew. This is the time of year where we can really start utilizing medicinal baths, which I think would be really great for all of us to look into. Putting clays and putting different essential oils and putting magnesium in your bath. We didn't even talk about that with Morley. Transdermal magnesium therapy, which is something Dr. Circus, who's been on our show, talks about, written an entire book about transdermal magnesium therapy. So lots of ways to get medicine into your body, and through your skin and through your lungs were some of the original ways that came before ingestion. So there's a lot of really interesting ways to do that. Pink Bunch says, honestly, you can't live without a healthy body is such a toxic narrative. What about people born with incurable diseases? I mean, come on. I'm not sure what you mean. You can't live without a healthy body? I never said you can't live without a healthy body. Right? But if we have the ability to control our biology, why wouldn't we? Right? I mean, that's why we're all here, right? We want to be able to become healthier and to have more energy and to not be a burden. And so if we have that ability within ourselves, I think it would behoove us to be able to see the totality of what we could become on this planet, right? So all of us are here for a certain reason. So if you're here to be a stockbroker, instead of being on a level 1 to 10, if you're here to be a stockbroker, why not be a level 10 stockbroker instead of a level 1, right? Why not be the fullest expression of who you're meant to be? The problem is that not only do we not know why we're here, but we also don't fully actualize our potential. And so, and so that's why we're here, I think, for personal growth and spiritual development. Pink Bunch says, I learned more about life from incurably sick person than almost all the health gurus. And that's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, they could be, because people who are incurably sick have tapped into some of the deeper truths as to why we're here, and that's why they're so empowering to be around. People who are health gurus who have never been through anything in their life, it's hard to relate to them because they're just spouting off things that they've learned without any real experience in something, And so an experience goes a long way. Bob says, Professor Arnold Arowit has great books on fasting and restoring your health. Yeah, hey, Bob, I read many of his books when I first got involved in health in 2003. I started off with Fit for Life, and then I read a bunch of Arnold Arowit's books back in the day. The mucusless diet healing system was one of them. Really fascinating guy, that Arnold Arowit. And Wim Hof is the guy that controls his temperature or something like that. I have a video about his technique to watch. Anybody know what it's about, really? He's using a certain breathing, pattern that controls his physiologic state, as well as the pH of his blood, and that has a direct impact on internal core body temperature. And that's how he's able to do the things that he does in the ice and things like that. So Bob, I take it by the people that you're recommending, you're really into let's see, not raw veganism, but because Dr. Sebi, I think he was a fruitarian, I think. Unfortunately, he passed away a while back under bizarre circumstances because he was having some effect on disease processes, right? So there's a lot of weird controversies going on about Dr. Sebi. But yeah, that's how Wim Hof was able to control his internal core temperature. And we could do that through our breath, and that's possible. And so I think it's important to realize that, the pH of our blood is more tightly controlled by our breath than it is by the food we eat. So Justin says, that fasting nonsense. Mucus is used by the body's immune system to quarantine and transport toxins out of the body. So Justin, I would employ the work of, if you're interested, I'm interested in people like you that respond this way, because there's the work of, what is her name? I'm drawing a blank on her name. Byron Katie, and she has thework.com, and you say, that fasting nonsense. Mucus is used by the body's immune system to quarantine and transport. Okay, yeah, so that could be true. That could be true. But do you know that's true? And do you know that's true all the time with all people in every situation? So this is the problem that we get into when we get into health, is that we get into, generalizations about things that people say, and they make claims, but no one is really understanding, and I don't think it's possible to know what exactly is going on inside everyone's body at all times. And so fasting is not nonsense. It's not. But you say mucus is used by the body's immune system. It could be. It could be. A lot of people say that. I've read that in many books. The body forms mucus because, you're building up an abundance of toxins. That could be true. Makes sense, right? But is it always true? We don't know. And so because we don't know if it's always true, to say something like fasting is nonsense is, in my opinion, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Andreas Moritz has great information. You know what's interesting about Andreas Moritz is that we were due to get him on the show, and unfortunately we didn't get him on, and he was scheduled to be on just a few weeks before he passed away. So yeah, that was unfortunate. So yeah, Andreas Moritz, rest in peace. Familiar with Byron Katie, don't believe in snowflakes. We're all humans with the same digestive system. Fasting is useful to cleanse, but mucus is not the enemy. Yeah, well, if you want to say she's a snowflake, that's fine. But I think there's much more going on, and I don't think it's possible to know exactly what's going on. And in order to do that, you'd have to cut someone open and look at them in real time, in my opinion. I fast every day, Tom says, for just 1 hour for eating. I also do a 36-hour fast each week and once a month for 3 days. I'm 52 and healthy, and hello, everyone. Awesome to have you here, Tom. Yeah, I do fasting myself. I do intermittent fasting every day, and I feel tremendous on it, and I love doing it, and I feel great. But on the other hand, if you... Let's see, Julia says too much mucus isn't healthy, so reducing it can be helpful in certain conditions. Isn't the idea that you wouldn't produce mucus if there's no infections to get rid of? Yeah, essentially, I mean, that's what they're saying, right? Is that you produce the mucus because you have infections. And so if you don't have any infections, you wouldn't produce the mucus. That's what they say, right? I don't know if that's true. I think that we really need to, before we sort of make broad generalizations about everything, I think it's important for us to see what works for us and take everything as an idea instead of a right or wrong concept, personally. I know this works for me because I do things like, we had a guest a while back. Let's see, what was her name? Cindy Sellers, and I really liked her a lot. But she went on and on the show talking about how oils are incredibly toxic for the body, right? So she went on and on saying that you would never find an oil in nature, and you would never sort of be roaming through the jungle and in the forest and find something like coconut oil, right? But she is a fan of eating coconut flesh if you come upon it. But this idea of hyper concentrating the flesh into an oil is not good for the body, and it causes disease and blah blah blah, right? So maybe she's right, maybe she's not. Her evidence for that was that people who had, let's see, she was doing colon hydrotherapy sessions with people, but I think she was doing something else there in her clinic in Hawaii. And she was saying that you see people that take oils have all this extra stuff come out of them. Well, I mean, it's possible too that, I mean, you kind of got to be a detective here, because, it's possible that it could be, something else. Maybe those people were eating something else that was just like having an oil, right? So it's not because it's like, people say, oh, cholesterol causes heart attacks because there's cholesterol found in, high levels in people that have heart attacks. Just because cholesterol is sort of there doesn't mean it's the causative factor, right? It's like when they cut people open and look at their bones and say there's calcium in their bones, so we need to eat a lot of calcium to build strong bones, not realizing the biological transmutation of the body using silica and magnesium to create calcium in the body and the mineral matrix in the body. And so just because there's calcium in the bones doesn't mean we need to eat calcium. Just because someone, a handful of people had this experience and they took oils, it doesn't mean oils are bad. Are oils unnatural? Of course, right? She is correct in saying that oils are unnatural, but is it healthy to take an unnatural substance? I'm curious what you guys think about that. Do you think it's healthy to take an unnatural substance? So an unnatural substance in this case would be like coconut oil, right? Or an essential oil, or, I mean, these essentially are processed foods, right? Is it healthy to take that? I don't know. And what do you mean by healthy? And can you say it's healthy for all people? Maybe I need more coconut oil at this time in my life than I do at some other time in my life. Or maybe coconut oil is bad for everyone on the planet Earth, but it's good for me in this particular time. So the way we do this is we connect with ourselves. And this is the most empowering thing that I try to impart to people is to really empower yourself so that you're dialed in to the point where you can listen to your body, and no amount of what other people say or do is going to deter you from what you know internally in your core being is true. And so that's where we need to be, is listening to our gut. And it doesn't matter what other people say. It's how do we feel, right? And being so in attunement and alignment with that, that you don't mistake it for other bacteria that live in your body, like candida or fungus or things like that. So you know how to differentiate, your body's craving for something versus, some parasite craving, sugar or something like that. So that's how we know, is we really dial in to what we really need, and listen to that. Do you know Dr. Alan Mandel from the channel Motivational Doc? I'm familiar with his name. No, I don't know him, but I know that name. I should look him up. You know what I'm going to do? If you guys have anybody that you want us to reach out to, let me know. Shoot, I think I just lost his name. Yeah, Dr. Alan Mandel. I'll open up a new tab and put him in, and then I can reach out to him and see about having him on the show if he's someone that's good. The motivational doc. A hard, thick bone does not always equal a strong one. They need to be flexible too, Urine Animal says. Yeah, it's true. You look at babies, and you look how flexible their bones are. It's like our twin little boys right now have the most flexible. I just look at them and I see super high silica in their body. They have no wrinkles, and they're just little fat rolls. And, it's incredible what little babies have as far as their bones. But they have high silica, high magnesium, and less calcium. And as we age, we get more calcium and more brittle. And that's why our bones tend to break. What a lot of people don't realize too is that when people fall, elderly people, and they have a hip fracture or something like that, a lot of times their hip actually breaks, and then they fall because of that. It's not that they fall and they break their hip; it's that their hip breaks and then they fall because of that, which is interesting. Sheeps and Neep says they are still healthy. They cannot be seen as unnatural. It's a natural substance. Yeah, so are you referring to like coconut oil in terms of that? I'd be fine to go 100% natural if the things we were up against weren't also 100% natural. See, Justin, you have the right idea here. However, we live in a toxic synthetic world, so using technology to our advantage only makes sense. This is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Good job. That's exactly the way I look at it as well. If we live in such an unnatural state, then it would behoove us to use unnatural protocols and substances that would help us overcome the unnatural default state that our world currently exists in. So, yes, essential oils are not natural. Coconut oil is not natural. But since we live in such an unnatural world already, don't be closed off and don't be closed-minded to things that might be unnatural but incredibly healthy. Dave Feldman, Chris says. Okay, let me look. Bob says get Rick Simpson. It's funny because after doing 619 shows, many of you, obviously, I'm assuming, haven't listened to all of them. If you have, that would be incredible. But we've had Rick Simpson on twice. He's an awesome person. Gummy bears. Gummy bears. Oh, gummy bears are unhealthy or unnatural, yeah. Karen says, I mean, we can't just be plopped onto Earth without a sense of awareness for different animals. Coconut oil is natural. After my bath, I have a session on the Bob Beck blood electrifier. Nice. Yeah, Sota Instruments. Look into that if you guys want to cleanse and purify your blood. The Bob Beck blood electrifier. Cars are not natural, nor are bikes. That is true. Paul Stamets, yeah, we're working on getting him as well. We've actually been going back and forth with him just the last couple of days. I sent him an email and he wrote me back. So we'll get him on the list. Right now we're booked 2 months out, so at least 2 months out. So I think we're not even available until December. So a lot of the guests that you might mention right now may not be here for a while because we're so booked up. Try to do your own coconut oil. You know what's in it then, yeah. Rick Simpson oils. Yeah, Rick Simpson's oils would be classified as unnatural as well. See, we need to be living as natural as possible, But if we have conditions that we're trying to work on, using unnatural substances, I think, would be part of a good overall health strategy. Like if your body had some excess cells that you want to get rid of, then I think that Rick Simpson's oils would be tremendous here, right? Are they natural? No, they're not natural because you actually have to process them in a very unnatural way. But it depends. I mean, how much of a purist do you really want to be? Linus Pauling for high-dose vitamin C protocols for curing illnesses. Yeah, we had Dr. Andrew Saul, and he talks a lot about high-dose vitamin C therapy and high-dose vitamin therapy. He was on our show a couple years ago, but Andrew Saul. He was a great guest to have on too. Yeah, and I guess You're an Animal says, we use technology, aka the mind, to augment the natural. So that's true. Yeah, I mean, essentially our mind is not, I mean, in a biological sense, it's natural, right? But from a technological perspective, it's not natural at all, because we can actually manipulate physical existence and physical reality to create the things that we want to create in our life, like building a house or building a car or something like that. So using our mind is not natural, but it's our mind that can help us overcome some of these things. Jason Fryer says, you're expressing this so beautifully. Bill says, here I am. That's great. That's great. Good to have you guys here. Yeah, cool stuff. Suzanne Humphreys. Okay. Anybody else you guys want to see us get on? I'll put tabs. I was going back and forth. Speaking of Suzanne, I was going back and forth with Suzanne Summers a while back. We should get her on the show. She'd be good. Talk about her book, Knockout. Oh, Suzanne Humphreys. You know what? Yeah, I just brought her up. We were going back and forth with her. Yeah, I think she's going to be on the show. She might even be scheduled. She is... Where did I see? Okay, microbes, vitamin C. Yeah, we've definitely reached out to her. I feel like I've communicated with her, and she might even be scheduled. If you look on our list, you might see her being on the show schedule on extremehealthradio.com. Yeah, Susan Humphreys, thanks for the reminder. Dr. Tent, yeah, he's going to be on the show. Dr. Tent, he's booked. I think he's in December. Erin Elizabeth. Yeah, she's a firecracker, isn't she? That Erin Elizabeth. Oh, man. Should we have her on the show? I thought about having her on the show, in person, because she comes out every now and then for some conferences and does some speaking out here in California, which is where we are. But she is quite the fireball. Yeah, she would be kind of fun, though, wouldn't she? Why not? Wim Hof. Yeah, Wim Hof's a great guest. We'll reach out to him. He's been on our list. We have a whole list that we keep a database, because I don't know if you guys know. I mean, I listen to podcasts like you wouldn't believe. I listen to so many podcasts. I listen on double speed, and I do my rebounder every day for half an hour in the sun. I do my workout 4 days a week, and that's at least an hour and a half. And then I go in the sauna every day for 30 minutes. And if I'm listening to everything at double speed, I'm going through so much content. So I'm familiar with all these people that you're saying. Many of them we've had on our show, and some of them are already scheduled. So yeah, I get through a lot of content, and so I'm always learning while I'm doing stuff. Like Jim Rohn said, turn your car into a mobile university. So I don't have any songs, I don't have any music, I don't listen to any of that stuff. Although I love music, and I use music for specific reasons. Like if I'm in a sort of downed emotional state, I need to pick me up, I'll listen to music. But for the most part, I'm always learning and studying and trying to learn as much as I possibly can. All right, Aaron and Dr. Mercola. I thought about having them because sometimes they speak at David Wolf's Longevity Now conference. So maybe we'll invite both of them to come in studio. That'd be fun to get them both going. All I got to do is just press that little button on Erin and get her going. Maybe I should just have Erin by herself and just press the button and, and let her get going on her rants about everything she goes on about. She's, we need people like that. To be honest, her energy is a little bit stressful for me. I don't mind saying that publicly. but her energy is a little bit stressful for me. But we need people like her out there in the world doing the work that she does, right? Because it's important, because she's doing a great work in the world, exposing what's really going on in terms of health. Mercola as well. I mean, talk about his work. He's incredible. Dr. Pompa, yeah, we have reached out to him already, so hopefully we'll have him on, as well as Dr. Jerry Tennant from the Body Electric. Healing is Voltage. So we'll get him on the show too, Dr. Jerry Tennant. These are all people we've already reached out to, so thank you for letting us know. He understands how the body is a bunch of electric circuits, including muscles as batteries. Yeah, speaking of that, the work of, what was his name? Really interesting guy. Did a lot of work. Robert O. Becker. He was an oral surgeon in the 60s, and he used magnetism and electricity for studying salamanders and regrowing their limbs with positive, negative, and magnetic stimulation. And so Robert O. Becker did some groundbreaking work in the 60s. So Dr. Jerry Tennant, I feel, is kind of continuing that on, the idea that healing is voltage. Because we are essentially, all of us are an electrical being, much more than we are physical. We're not a machine. The majority of the cells that make us up aren't even us. So then you start asking yourself, well, who are we, right? Who are we? And then if you go even deeper and saying like, oh man, if we're not our opinions, if we're not our ideas, we're not our philosophies, we're not our personality, then who are we? Because we were a human being before. Let's say you're a Republican and you become a Republican or a Democrat at the age of 10. Well, if you are your beliefs, then what were you when you were 9, right? So if the majority of the cells on a physical level, over 90% aren't even ours, and then you go to the spiritual level and you start realizing that we're not our belief systems, then who are we? Right? It starts to get really, really weird, right? The more you start thinking about this stuff, who are we and why are we here? So understanding all that is really key. All right, guys, I'm going to go break my fast. If you follow us on Instagram, you'll probably see what we do the rest of the day, but feel free to do that. And also make sure to join the Extreme Health Academy. I'm going to give you guys a coupon code if you guys want to join. We're getting so many new members into this academy that it's really quite humbling to help and serve you guys. And the academy is really basically only a place for those of you who are still on the call or on the YouTube and Facebook. It's only for those of you that are very serious. And if you're still here, you're serious about your health. So I'd love to have you join. There's a free 2-week trial that I can give you. And we're adding new courses every week or every month. We're doing live Q&A calls every week, getting to the root cause of what's going on with the human body and empowering everyone. So if you guys want to join, it is extremehealthacademy.com. I'll put a link below for that. And there's EHR 14 is a free 14-day trial. But also I wanted to tell you guys about this too, as a incentive to going to our store and checking our store out, and as a thank you for supporting us in our store. If you go to our store, if you go to extremehealthradio.com, you'll see a link up top that says shop. And if you go to our store, I will give you, if you purchase something through our store and you send me the receipt link for that, I'll give you a 30-day trial to the Extreme Health Academy. That way you can join, sign up, make friends in the community, and start going through the content that's going to change your life. It's going to empower you. So like I said before, this stuff should be taught in schools. You know, how to boost and optimize your immune system, how to overcome and treat and prevent cancer, how to reverse heart disease. I mean, this is stuff that, like, dude, we should be teaching this stuff in school, you know? So it like I told Morley, it frustrates me that we even have to have an academy, you know? But the fact is, school makes people sick. Our society and culture makes people sick. So it's that sickness that we need to help people overcome, because we do have control over our biology. Yeah, let me put a link, Jojo, if you guys want to check it out. HTTPS extremehealthacademy.com, and it's EHR14. And Jojo, if you say, if you join, come and say hello in the forums, because the forums are going crazy and we're all hanging out talking in the forums. And so, and then if you haven't, you can go to our store and purchase any of the products there, and I'll give you a 30-day trial for that too. So we'll give you a separate coupon code for that. But yeah, this stuff should be taught in school. And so that's why we do our shows. That's why we do this work, so that we can all feel empowered and realize, like cancer is not a death sentence, like Ty Bollinger said. And, you are designed to heal. The power to heal is ours. So that's really what it's all about. So we love you guys very much. Jojo, you are awesome. Thanks for being here. You're an animal. Thanks for being here as well. It's always good to see you. 635574. I think this is the first time I've seen you, but you've said some really cool things and good suggestions as well. So I'm glad that you're here. Come back and join us on Wednesday and Friday. Julia, it's great to have you here as well. Chris, always great to have you. Bob, awesome to see you here. Sheeps and Neeps, great to have you here. Tom, really great to see all of you guys. Karen, Caitlin, you guys are great. You guys are really, really great, and it's just awesome. Justin Poulos, thanks for joining us. Pink Punch, a lot of really great people here, so thank you guys. I won't bore people that are watching the replay with reading all of your guys' names, but just know that I'm very, very humbled and grateful that you're here, and you're a part of this, and you're taking your health to new levels. That's really what it's all about. So thank you again. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel too. If you're listening on iTunes, Facebook, or YouTube, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the content. Obviously, not all the content is going to be, you're going to want to watch or listen to, but you might just find something that changes your life when you're in desperate need of it. So make sure to subscribe. All right, guys, we love you very, very much. Join us again this Wednesday at 10:45, and it's time for me to go break my fast. I'll see you on Instagram, and I'll check you guys later. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Thanks for watching.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse